Welcome to Become a Provider, a weekly podcast inspiring leaders and parents to be servant leaders and providers. I'm Justin Thomas, a business consultant, health coach, CEO, and author. Together, we'll explore servant leadership through interviews with leaders that I respect. Plus, I will share lessons from my life and career trying to model the ultimate provider, Jesus. Whether you're an executive, community leader, parent, or simply want to make a positive difference, this podcast is for you. Let's begin. Welcome back to the Become a Provider show. And as you may know, every other week I'm delivering this solo show series called The Healthy Provider. These are habits that I'm currently implementing to be a healthy provider. What is that? You can follow along if you're listening to this and you want to. In the show description, there should be a PDF link, and it'll have some of the slides that I'm going to review with you. So the healthy provider. So what does this mean? Just let's go back to definitions. Provider equals blessing and protecting. That's what we're talking about here. And so what is a healthy provider? We're blessing and protecting in a way that doesn't burn us out. It actually gives us energy. And so that's what I'll be sharing during this series. As you may know, I've divided this up into 5 pillars, and we're going to tackle each pillar with a separate episode. We started by talking about family, and a couple episodes I reviewed something that Amy and I do. We call the Family Summit. But today we're talking about health and wellness and fitness, and what are the things that I'm doing to help make me a healthy provider, and maybe it helps you as well. Now, this all started from a family email that I sent out at the beginning of 2024 to my family. And I said, hey, as we begin a new year, these are some things that I've just discovered in the health and wellness field that I think are core truths. And then here's some things I'm just geeking out on. So take it, leave it, do what you want to. I was just reflecting before clicking on the record button here with my wife, how fun this is that I'm sharing information that I'm not making this up, meaning like I'm not trying to just fill in a podcast slot. These are things that I'm doing in my life and I'm sharing with my family. And I'm just extending that out now to the podcast audience. Here are the 5 health truths that I sent to my family that I'd encourage you to consider. And maybe it challenges you or maybe it doesn't. It's things that I think are core truths as I record this in the health and wellness space, which is very confusing. And for those that don't know my background, for the last 7 years, I've worked for a company called Doable Health, which is a health and wellness company targeted towards the corporate health coaching world, meaning businesses hire us, and then we deliver a employee wellness program to help employees be healthier, happier, conquer stress, anxiety, burnout, help them if they want to lose weight, and whatever they want to do in their health and wellness. So that's my background. I've been in this industry and I've seen it from the corporate perspective, more so on the operations side of the house. I've also received training as a health coach. And in addition to the national board certification that I have as a health coach, I've just enjoyed keeping up with this by learning through other thought leaders in the space. And those thought leaders, I'm presenting a lot of them today to you as well, that form these core health truths to live by, that I live by. Now, I will say the health and wellness industry is just pretty intense, meaning there's a very passionate group on all sides. So I'm just going to share with you the truths that I live by in the health and wellness field, and I hope it inspires you. Today, for my profession, just so you know, I'm focused on consulting founders, business leaders, how they deliver health benefits to their employees. So I'm in this space, and that's through Bull Benefits. So I'm in this space currently, professionally, where I'm always learning what are the best tools and programs, thoughts, strategies, so that I can help business leaders provide better benefits for their employees. But then for me personally, how can I be a healthy provider? So all of this is what makes up this presentation, just to give you a sense of my background. Let's get into the 5 health truths to live by. Let's start with sleep. I think this is one that we can all agree. So we need to sleep 7 to 9 hours a night. There's a great TED Talk called How Much Sleep Do You Really Need? This is from the speaker, Matt Walker. He's a sleep scientist, professor, and author. He's got a book about this. And I've provided a link that's just about a 5-minute talk. Super simple, but it's just a reminder to ourselves, we need sleep to be at our creative best. And this is a challenge for me because I enjoy doing F3 workouts, and F3, that free men's workout, starts at 5:30 in the morning. So if I'm not disciplined getting enough sleep, then I'm compromising for the rest of the day. So, especially for guys in F3, this is something that we need to make sure we're living a lifestyle that's promoting sleep. And Matt Walker has all the research around this if you want to dive into it. Sometimes we think in the health field, oh, what's the right supplement, or what's the right morning routine, or what's the right diet? And then if we're not getting enough sleep, then this doesn't really matter. Like, our bodies need this. God designed us to get sleep. He designed us for Sabbath. Another topic that I've been trying to really lean into, let me give over my schedule to the Lord and also my body, meaning, hey, there's a lot of things that I've got goals with and I'd love to achieve, but I also need to just respect this idea of rest. Sleeping, resting, Sabbath, one of my 5 core truths to live by. The next thing is to get 3 hours of Zone 2 training per week. So what is this? There's a blog post by Dr. Peter Attia that I've provided a link to. And this is to help us with our longevity. And let's say that you are not exercising whatsoever. And that's actually the majority of Americans. If you just go from 0 minutes to 90 minutes, then according to his book, Outlive, Dr. Peter Attia's book, you'll reduce all risk mortality by 14%. And he says, if there was a drug that did that, it would be the most highly anticipated drug of the century. It would be a blockbuster one. And in a sense, we all have access to that. So a very practical goal for us all is to get 3 hours of this Zone 2 training. What is Zone 2 training? How Dr. Attia describes this is it's a little bit more than a walk, but less than a hard run. And so a simple test is that while you're doing whatever exercise of your choice, you can still talk during this exercise, but it's labored breathing. It would be obvious that, oh, are you on a jog, Justin? Or are you on an elliptical machine? Or are you on a walk with your rucksack on? I can tell your breathing's a little bit heavy, you're laboring with it. That's a sweet spot. If you cannot speak during the exercise, then your heart rate is that higher zone. And typically, there's different measurements of your zone when it comes to your heart rate, starting with the lower numbers, zone 1 and 2, lower heart rate, all the way up to 5 or more, depending what system is measuring your heart rate. That's another core pillar, is prioritize exercise. And hopefully this is encouraging. When I say exercise, it's not all-out sprints 3 hours a week. This is just getting out there, whatever activity you want to, cycling, rowing, jogging, rucking, pick something and try to target 3 hours. And maybe that could be 45 minutes 4 times a week. So that's a very practical goal, to be a healthy provider. The next one here, a little more controversial, but I think this is a core pillar. It's to eat 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. Now I'm going to highlight a blog post from Dr. Mark Hyman, How to Get More Protein in Your Diet, where he talks about this. Mark Hyman, if you don't know, he's a leading health he's a physician, and he's focused on using food as medicine to support longevity. Very popular within the functional medicine field, multi-best-selling author, speaker, podcaster. So someone that I enjoy listening to. And what I've found myself doing is really resonating with older health thought leaders. Dr. Attia is 50. Dr. Mark Hyman, I think, is in his 60s. And Mark Sisson with the Primal Blueprint book and the work that he does through Primal Kitchen. I believe he's in his late 60s now. I enjoy learning from older thought leaders in this space. And here's one that I think we can have a lot of different preferences when it comes to our diet. And what I like about this is that it's super practical. It's, hey, when I think about my meals, do I think I'm getting 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal? And that helps me to prioritize what is on my plate. So it helps me be satiated. And also, part of the reason behind this is to help you maintain your muscle mass, especially as we age. Our muscles are atrophying. We are losing muscle. So we need to be proactive with that by doing strength training, we'll talk about, and then also by having enough protein so we can rebuild that muscle. Now, I don't have it on a slide here, but I will say there is a tension where when we're eating, we're not allowing our bodies to rest. I like this challenge of when we have a meal, let's make it count. Rather than grazing all day, let's actually have our meals packed with protein so we are building that muscle. At the same time, I think another good challenge is that we should go at least 12 hours overnight without eating to allow our bodies to rest and to do a little self-cleansing. So I am training for ultra marathons. I'm not prioritizing intermittent fasting much these days, but that's a popular thing in the health and wellness field, is to do time restricted feeding or intermittent fasting so that you're allowing your body rest between the time that you eat so it can repair itself. And that's through autophagy. For me personally, I just shoot for 12 hours. I just go for 12 hours. And then a goal of mine is to do longer fasts. The book Outlive talked about the 16-hour fast had become popularized, but it was done in mice to demonstrate autophagy. Mice can't go very long without food. So 16 hours for a mouse is like a couple days for a human. So if you want that level of autophagy, you actually need to think of in terms of days, hours. Because of that, and with the heavy training that I do for my personal ultra marathon, I feel good if I'm going 12, 14 hours. And that's typically what I do on a day-to-day. I might do more, might do less, depending on just how I'm feeling. But here's a takeaway. Eat 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. How do you do that? This blog post gives you some good strategies around that, no matter what your protein strategies are. Based. All right, let's see here. Keep it going here on the presentation. Next slide. Here's one. Another core pillar, one of my 5 core pillars. Treat sugar like a condiment. A great video by Dr. Lustig, I think is how you pronounce it. Quote, why we are all getting sick and why sugar isn't love. There's a YouTube video here, why everyone's getting sick. I listened to him on the Levels Health podcast. It was a fascinating one. And so I think this is very practical, that let's treat sugar as a condiment. Just like a condiment, like you put a little salt, a little pepper on your meal, then we should think of sugar that way versus sugar being in everything. And then he also challenges, let's not always have our first go-to strategy to demonstrate love with sugar. What are we teaching our kids when it's all about sugar all the time? We have treat time with our family. We, I think, do a good job of not holding back. At the same time, we make sure to label it as a treat. And we're very particular with that. Maybe something unusual with our family where girls know, oh, is it treat time? So we don't just graze on sugar all day. It's addictive. It's a challenge for us all. This is a really good interview if you're interested in more of the science behind what does sugar do to our bodies. Therefore, we want to limit sugar and treat it like a condiment. So I really like that one. The last one, so this is the 5th pillar of my core health strategies, emotional health. Like, what am I doing weekly for emotional health? And I just need to recommend the book Outlive. The last chapter of that is fantastic, by Dr. Peter Attia. And what he specifies is 3 areas of investment for your emotional health. Number 1, sense of purpose. Number 2, relationships. And number 3, emotional regulation. So do you have a purpose-driven life? Do you have meaningful relationships? And how are you doing with your emotions? Do you have a bunch of highs and lows? And so those are areas to check in on a weekly basis. And he shares his story around this and some of his emotional breakdowns and challenges, particularly during COVID, that I think is really powerful. So you can work on all this stuff, but then if you don't have the emotional health, what are you doing? As a Christian, this is a good reminder of, am I spending quality time just enjoying the presence of God through reading and praying and being in community? At the moment, I'm going through the book, The Songs of Jesus by Pastor Keller, and just a simple devotional, which is really nice. He goes through the Psalms in a 365-day devotional. I picked that up from a men's Bible study that I was part of. So that's one I do. And I also really enjoy My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers, and then just reading scripture. So that's how I seek emotional health and being in my life. So those are my 5 core health tips to live by. I think that you can all take this and run with it. So just in summary, get your sleep, 7 to 9 hours. Get your zone 2, 90 minutes a week. Try targeting 45 minutes a day for 4 days. Protein. Try to shoot for 30 to 40 grams of protein. And there's different strategies around this, but I think this is a good one. And then also with that protein one, have some time of rest, 12 hours, where you're sleeping and not eating and having a break before you go to bed from food. So what that could look like is, hey, you just go from p.m. you stop eating to 8 a.m. That's 12 hours, right? Or you can even extend it further than that, just delay that a little bit further of 14 hours or 16 hours, whatever you feel good with, but then to prioritize that protein with your meals. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's a newer thought within the health and wellness field. I want to highlight there with protein, 30 to 40 grams per meal. And it depends on your body weight and what your goals are. Sugar, treat that like a condiment, a staple. And emotional health, what are you doing each and every week for your emotional health? If you were offended by any of these, then get ready to be offended more, because these are the actual kind of what I think are just truths to live by. But I recognize that these are things that, might have rubbed some people the wrong way, especially those in the health wellness field, because there's a lot of different strategies. But those are my core truths to live by. Here are 5 deep dives to try. And this is also things that I presented to my family. So I'm going to throw these out there to you guys, and you can take it, leave it, do what you want to. But this is what I'm doing personally to be a healthy provider. So let me quickly go over these, and I want to spend enough time to give you a taste of them. In summary, they are my 5 deep dives to try. Number 1, ultra training. Number 2, geek out on some labs. Number 3, get a DEXA scan. Number 4, do a sweat test. And number 5, what is your sodium rate? So these are the deep dives to try. Ultra training. So for me, what this looks like is I run 5 to 6 times a week. And I also do F3 or strength training 3 times a week. And on the presentation, I've got like a snapshot of a typical week here. The green bubbles you can see are my runs. And then the red bubbles are my F3 or strength workouts. And so at the time of this recording, I'm doing anywhere, most weeks, like 40 to 50 miles per week running, and then 3 days doing strength training. And so that's what it looks like for me. And I'm just trying to maintain my fitness. This is also a great stress reliever for me in my life. It makes me feel good. And it gives me some discipline of how I'm spending my time and helps me. Typically, I do this in the morning with a long run on Saturdays. So this is really working well for me. Might sound crazy to you, but hey, this is the deep dives to try. I've enjoyed getting into the ultra marathon scene ever since I had this crazy idea of running a marathon in honor of Pop during his, I think that was like a 3-year anniversary of his passing. I signed up for a marathon, COVID happened, it was canceled, and then that motivated me to just keep running and to stay fit, even without having a big race. At this time, I'm considering doing another 100-miler, but we'll see if that pans out. More to come. So ultra training. I just think this is great. And this has actually become a lot more popular. There's some wonderful examples of older runners doing ultra marathons and just having this be part of their lifestyle. And that's what I hope to embody as well. Jeff Browning has been on a podcast, and he was a coach of mine for a couple of years actually in this field of just coaching me up on what does a typical training program look like, my diet, how do I use carbs strategically, but not live off of them like a lot of runners do. And also shout out to Peter Defty of OFM. Really enjoy his research and leadership in this ultra training space as well, being a fat adaptive athlete. So I enjoy this. Wanted to give you some deep dives to try. So this is just pushing a little bit further. Just for me, I just enjoy this, running 5 times a week and doing some strength training. Next up, geek out on some data, some labs and a CGM. I invested into this product called Function Health. It's an annual subscription, and it's from Mark Hyman, who I referenced earlier. And what it does is it allows you access to their online portal, and they send you to a local LabCorp to do some blood work tests. So it's actually so much that I went 2 different days. So within a week period, you go twice, and they draw out your blood. There's also a urine test. And then they give you 106 biomarkers. So it's just amazing. And they tell you what's in range, what's out of range. I've got a snapshot of mine from the beginning of this year. And it also gives you like a biological age as well. And some health thought leaders like those biological ages tests. Others think it's just made up. But regardless, I enjoyed this particular investment because it was so many labs for $500, which is very affordable in this field. And they also give you some clinical notes as well. You can take to your primary care doctor and have a game plan for, okay, like what do I do about these things that are out of range? And if you're looking at blood work and you want like the full workup, that's the easiest way to do it, I think. It's just go to Function Health, get this, pay $500. You get the test at the beginning of the year, and then halfway through the year, which I'm overdue for mine, is you get another 60. So you can see if things are trending up or down. And that's something that I'm enjoying using. The next thing is a CGM. This is a continuous glucose monitor. I first learned about this through Outlive, that book with Peter Tia saying, hey, rather than saying like never eat a carb again in your life or never eating sugar again in your life, you can just get a CGM and see like how specific foods impact your blood glucose levels. And so I signed up for this company called Levels Health. It allowed me to get a continuous glucose monitor, which is that patch you see in the back of people's arms. Type 1, type 2 diabetics might have it to help them regulate their blood glucose levels because either they don't make insulin or the insulin isn't effective anymore. So here's a blog post on why blood sugar matters, even if you don't have diabetes, from Levels that I really encourage you to read because it makes us appreciate why this is important for our metabolic health. And just a fun thing that I found out was you wear this patch, you eat food, and then it tells you how much your blood glucose levels rises and falls. And the whole idea here is that anytime we eat food, our blood glucose will rise, but we don't want it to spike. And how this particular app references spiking is if it's above 30, an increase of 30 in your blood glucose with whatever measurement it is. And I did a test of eating some pizza. I had a cauliflower crust pizza at a local Bricks, and I had a 76 rise in my blood glucose. And I was like, wow, that's not good. I thought maybe the cauliflower crust would be better. However, I learned that it wasn't a pure cauliflower crust. It was like a blend with a bunch of other ones. And then when I did the regular one, it was 86. And I even had a salad before that as well. And so my takeaway is, at least at Bricks and maybe at other places, don't spend the extra $5 for a cauliflower crust pizza when it's not really just pure cauliflower. Just get the regular stuff. But have a salad before or some fiber before, and that helps to blunt the spike. But as you can see, when you're dealing with pizzas, probably not going to matter. I also did a test with ice cream as well. That was fun to test between an erythritol sweetened ice cream versus a traditional sugar ice cream. And it was much lower on the monk fruit one. So those are some fun things to report back to you. And actually, I think I've got that here. Yeah, so the ice cream test. So on the next slide, I've got a gentle rise, which was that increase of 20 when I did the erythritol and monk fruit sweetened ice cream, which is Rebel ice cream, versus the Haagen-Dazs, which was 32. So you can see, how your sweeteners matter when it comes to blood glucose. Now, there's a whole debate about those monk fruit and erythritol, good for your long-term health. I can tell you, I don't know the details about that. It's always changing, but I can tell you from just a pure blood glucose spike, it certainly is a better option than just pure sugar in that. So all that to say, if you want to do a deep dive, get a continuous glucose monitor as well. And then you can invest into the Function Health as well. All right, next up, get an annual DEXA scan. What is a DEXA scan? I've got an image here. It's a scan of your body to see your bone density, to see your lean muscle mass, and to just give you a sense of where you're at today. And so it helps identify if you're overnourished, undermuscled, and it's about $100. I've got a link that you can see where your closest DEXA scan might be. And the point of this test is just make sure that, as we talked about earlier, as we age, we're losing muscle. It's nice to know if our current strategy with exercise and diet is helping or hurting. Meaning, are we eating enough protein to keep our muscle mass? And if you get a DEXA scan back and you're like, gosh, my lean muscle tissue has actually gone down, that might be another gentle reminder of, okay, am I getting that 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal? Am I doing strength training? Am I getting in that zone 2 training? It's just a nice data point to see, are you trending in the right direction or the wrong direction? An annual DEXA scan, out of pocket, about $100. Not going to be covered by insurance most of the time. Just something that you do to be interested in those items. For the next one, if you want to take a deep dive, especially for the runners out there, do a sweat test. And why do a sweat test? This is so you know how much water that you need when you go out on a run. So the sweat test, this is where you measure yourself before a 1 hour run and after a 1 hour run without drinking any water. So I had a couple different ones here, and I've got this on the screen where I did it from temperatures ranging as low as 31 degrees and as high as 60 degrees. And I range basically from about 2 pounds to 3 pounds. I would lose that in a matter of an hour. And gosh, now in the summer times, I'd be curious to see if that would go from 3 pounds to 3.5 pounds or how high that would go. Amy will tell you, come back, just a sweaty mess. This is helpful just to know how much you sweat. We're all different. And it's a simple test. You can just do this with a scale and measurement before and after a 1 hour run. And so you can see here on the screen, I just documented the temperature, the pre-run weight, the post-run weight, and the difference in pounds. And this just helps me have a sense, like I said, of like how much water should I be drinking during these long events that unique to my body. And when I do the ultra marathon races, this is helpful. But it's not just about getting water back into your system. You also need electrolytes. How much electrolytes do we need? There's a range for that as well, but you can get a test if you want to geek out. And there's a sodium concentration test. This is done, the one I did by an independent contractor called Precision Hydration. They've got the equipment that they then train independent locations. And the one I went to in the Raleigh-Durham area is called Rainer Strength and Nutrition. And I was the top end of their results, meaning that I had a higher sodium concentration in my sweat. I was a top 5 with all of the participants. And so I'm so glad I did this, because if I just follow kind of the common methodology, I'd probably be having less electrolytes as part of my hydration strategy when I really need more. So for instance, for me, what they recommend is that I needed about, let's see here. My sodium losses per 32 ounces of sweat was 1,371 milligrams. That's 1,371 milligrams of sodium. So they gave me some fueling hydration goals here, just looking at the report. So having 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams of sodium per hour, or 32 ounces of sweat that I would lose with that. Fascinating. Our bodies are all different. And so if you take a deep dive, you can find out exactly a little bit more of how much sodium do I need when I am hydrating myself, especially during these long ultra marathon results here. I thought this was just a fascinating test. This is a little snapshot of my results from Rainer. Thank you very much for doing this test for me, and then identifying myself 5. A lot of sodium in my sweat, apparently. How do I do that? Some practical things beyond just putting salt in your water. There's a couple companies I use. Relight, I like using them because they have Redmond salt in their products. Relight is one of the hydration powders I use. And then also Element is another one that I use as well. In summary, thanks for listening to this, by the way. This has been really fun to reflect on. I had 5 health truths to live by and 5 deep dives to try. The 5 health truths to live by: get your sleep, get your zone 2 in, get your protein, limit the sugar, and invest into your emotional health and well-being. And the deep dives to try: if those things are boring to you, get into some ultra training, be consistent with that running and strength training, push yourself a little bit further. It's amazing, and it's a great community to get plugged into. Geek out on some labs with function health stuff I talked about, that you can really get a wide picture and a deeper picture of your, not only your metabolic health, but just specific biomarkers, both for longevity. Consider getting a DEXA scan once a year. Consider doing a sweat test to see how much do you sweat when you work out and how much water you need to replenish yourself with. And do that in different temperatures so you can game plan, particularly if you're doing ultramarathon events or other endurance events, or just going for a long hike, just to know what you might need. And then the sodium rate, sweat rate, was an interesting one I did as well. So I hope that's helpful to be a healthy provider. That's what I do. So we've gone through a couple of the pillars so far. The next one is more about the spiritual growth, and we'll talk about that, like how I try to be a healthy provider. So I hope this has been an enjoyable series for you so far. It has been for me. I love sharing what I'm actually doing in my life to go from being a passive guy to being more of a provider for my family. And not only that, to be a healthy provider. So with that said, I'll leave you with this as well. We, as you may have heard, in this theme of being a healthy provider, based on all my work in the health benefits field, I've come to find out the power of working with a doctor who has time to work with you on your health being. And so this is called a direct primary care provider. It's a subscription membership. So rather than going through traditional insurance for your PCP or primary care provider, these doctors called direct primary cares clinics, they offer unlimited primary care for a monthly fee. Typically, depending on the doctor and the practice and where you are in the area, could be $60 to $100 per month for this. So I'm a big believer in this. And so part of the work I want to be known for with the C.L. Thomas Fellowship nonprofit is that we are inspiring leaders and parents to be servant leaders and providers in their life and for others. And I thought, let's start something called the Provider Fund, where we are actually investing into individuals to get access to a direct primary care provider for a whole year. So we're going to pull our resources together. If you would like to donate to this, you can go to the C.L. Thomas Fellowship website, clthomasfellowship.org, go to the donate button, and we would love to have your support. We're currently raising $1,200 for one individual to get access to a direct primary care provider to help them become a healthier provider. And then we are matching it. So my wife and I are matching the first $1,200. We would love for you to be involved in this. No pressure, but this is part of the ministry. The C.L. Thomas Fellowship is to push forward this encouragement and inspiration of being the best providers we can be, like Jesus, and at the same time be super practical. So I think we can do this in a new and fresh way is by sponsoring people to get access to a 1 year with a direct primary care provider. So thank you so much for listening to this episode and this edition of the Healthy Provider series. We'll see you next time, and I'll be interviewing a new guest next. Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Become a Provider show. If you've enjoyed today's episode and want to continue your journey in servant leadership, I invite you to sign up for my free weekly newsletter, Always Provide. Head over to alwaysprovide.org to subscribe. Each week, you'll receive insights, inspiration, and practical tips to help you grow as a servant leader and provider in all areas of your life. Before we wrap up, I'd like to remind you that this podcast is a ministry of the C.L. Thomas Fellowship, a nonprofit organization created to honor my late father, an exemplary provider. The fellowship is dedicated to providing free resources that inspire parents and leaders to emulate Jesus as a servant leader and provider. Your support helps continue this important work. If you found value in today's episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or leaving us a review on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, remember, we're all called to be providers. Let's make a positive difference by serving others. Keep blessing and protecting.